Welcome to this special school committee meeting of Thursday, February 28th. We open with the public hearing on the FY20 superintendent's proposed school budget. This is a legally required public hearing that's been noticed in the Advocate for the past couple weeks. Do we have any public participation? No, so we'd have no public participation here. We've been getting some emails and stuff, but none here. So we will go immediately into our regular school committee meeting of Thursday, February 28th.
Madam Chair,
Oh, sorry.
if we're in a public hearing, we need to declare the public hearing, open it, say, is there anyone else who wants to talk, anyone else who wants to talk? You got to basically give people 3 chances to come up, and then we exit the public hearing.
Okay, I was unaware of this.
Of course,
So,
we rotate chairs every year, and nobody remembers.
yes, okay. So, is there anyone who wants to come forward and speak? Seeing none. Is there anyone who wants to come forward and speak? Still see none. Is there anyone who wants to come forward and speak? And
Madam
once again,
Chair, I move we exit the public hearing.
Second.
okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we now exit the public hearing. Now we open the regular school committee meeting of Thursday, February 28th. And again, we open with public participation. I see still no public participation. So we will begin with the start time discussion. Dr. Bodie, do you want to begin with? So this is discussing a potential change in the start times for either the high school and or the middle schools. And we had begun some discussion of this last time, and now we're going to continue.
That's correct. For those that may be listening for the first time, just a little bit of background on this. A couple of years ago, the Middlesex superintendents, when I say the Middlesex, we belong to an athletic league called the Middlesex League. There are 14 districts in that league. Discussed whether we would want to address the issue of start times, because the research was then and it continues to be that it is healthier for adolescents to have a later start time in their day just because of their sleep rhythms and their biorhythms. So one of the issues always has been around start times is athletics. And so we said that if we could just take that off the table, then there could be other considerations. And there are other considerations. There, in other districts, there's bus issues, there's contractual issues. There are start time issues with the schools in their district. So there are a lot of issues that you have to deal with when you make a major change like this. Over this time, there has been some movement toward 8:30, though there's been movement to times very similar to what we have. For example, Belmont next year will be moving to 8:05. Some districts are discussing it and also deferring it out a couple of years as for purposes of planning on the part of the school and teachers. So last year, as part of our negotiations, we decided to have a calendar committee to look at a number of issues around the calendar. And from that committee, decided to have a survey to take a look at we could take a look at start times. That was one of the issues. Then there was the issues of how could we avoid perhaps having to go to the end of June in terms of the calendar, whether we started before Labor Day or whether we eliminated religious holidays. So a survey was sent to parents and teachers as well this fall. And there is positive sentiment in general for a later start time. However, as we've been, and I personally favor that myself as a later, for the high school and possibly the middle school, as we have been looking at this more deeply, there are issues that have arisen that I think when we had the results of the survey back in the fall, you know, in concept, you really like the idea, you can see the merits of it, but when you dig deeper into some of the considerations and the timing of a decision, there are issues that need to be still addressed. And so I think that's something that we need to talk about tonight. But my recommendation at this point, given what I have come to understand and a lot of discussions that have gone on, is that there's still more things that we need to work on in terms of logistics. Among those things are contractual issues that we need to address, more time to plan, more time for teachers to plan. And so it would be good to know the sentiment of the committee and to think about the next steps in this process. And I think that there are more planning steps that we need to have before we make a decision. So that's where we are tonight, and tonight was an opportunity to discuss this further.
Dr. Seuss.
So I just wonder if it makes sense for the committee to either vote on some sort of motion of support, if that's something that we agree with, pending successful negotiation of any contractual issues with teachers. So I'd like to propose that motion. We can discuss whether the motion makes sense. You know,
Okay.
what?
Yep.
So the motion is that the school committee supports the move to an 8:30 start time pending successful negotiations with the unions. That,
I'll second it for purposes of discussion.
Okay.
Just for clarification, is this more than just a vote for support, or would this automatically happen if negotiations, in your mind, is it would it automatically kick in that we have
Pending
passed this
successful.
if we do?
I mean, we still have to vote on calendar, but
Okay. If that's the case, I'm going to vote against it only because I don't think it's appropriate to anticipate resolution in negotiations. I have no problem with supporting the concept, and I do support the concept wholeheartedly. I would ask us to wait, if it's a matter of immediacy, to implement it for time and things of that nature, which I don't think it is, because it wouldn't happen till, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Bodie, wouldn't happen till at least a year from next September.
I would say so. I think we need time to work
mean-
through a lot of issues that have risen in the last couple months as we've talked about it.
Again, I would just ask to consider this.
I don't think it can go into effect immediately because it's not specific enough.
Yeah, that
And
sounds right.
also it supports move. It doesn't
If-
dictate will move or, it's,
If my vote is just a statement of support for the concept, I have no problem. I just want to make this clear before we
yeah,
vote.
and it doesn't say which schools or anything. It's not specific enough. Okay.
yeah, okay.
Mr. Cardin's next.
Thank you. So after we discuss this motion, I intend to offer a motion to change the start time next year to 8:30 at the middle school and high schools. That is allowed by the contract. There are some issues with after-school meetings, which can be worked through. But when we were negotiating the contract, the committee was very clear that we wanted the flexibility to be able to make this change. We've been talking about it for 3 years. As you said, one of the blocking issues was the Minuteman League, which has been solved. And as Mr. Schlickman said last meeting, we've been talking about it for a long time. Dr. Janger has been strongly advocating for it, expecting it. We all know it's going to be very beneficial for our kids. And so after this motion, I will be making that motion.
Mr. Schlickman.
Okay, I've reviewed a couple of the issues regarding the contract. I don't think they're insurmountable. The only question in my mind is, can we do it in September with a notice with a vote tonight? Is that too short notice for everybody concerned? I mean, the frustration I have is, I think, the similar one to Mr. Cardin, in that we've been talking about this for a long time. We've been told that there are issues and issues and issues, and as the issues fall away, we still haven't moved. I'm not sure how I'm going to vote for it. I want to listen to some more of the discussion. I don't think we need to negotiate the start time. I really don't. I think we can modify the schedule and be in compliance with the contract in order to do it. So I wouldn't vote for a motion that says pending contract negotiations. The other thing is that the initial survey that we did came out largely in favor. Now, all of a sudden, we're getting a crescendo of people who are not happy with this. So I'm wondering if this is a prevailing voice or a loud minority within the secondary level. And I'm not really willing to go and hold off on doing something that's good for kids because a significant and loud minority of our high school staff is objecting. And I think many for good reasons. It's going to be difficult to make changes. And I think that for parents as well, that it might be difficult to make changes with this short notice because they've got to plan daycare and have other things fall into place. So I'm willing to listen. I strongly support moving to 8:30. My heart is with Mr. Carden, but I don't know what I'm going to do until I hear the remainder of the conversation.
I'm willing to withdraw my motion and support the stronger motion. I think this is the single most important thing we can do for academic achievement, for the emotional health of our students. We had 73% of parents supporting this, with 12%, not sure. Very small percentage of parents who are opposed. We had the majority of teachers when we did the survey in favor of this. And again, I said this is the single most important thing that we can do for academic achievement, for social and emotional health, for physical health. There's just a bunch of evidence on this. So I'd like to withdraw my motion and support Mr. Carden's stronger motion. We can vote.
No.
Can I direct a question to Dr. Seuss? At any point during this process, did any faculty from the high school or the middle school ever show up at a community relations subcommittee meeting?
No, I mean,
Has there ever been any conversation other than the one, other than the survey, which was frankly a conversation, I think, or the email that we received? Directed at any of us?
Not to us, and that may not have been appropriate. We had one sort of outreach meeting in the evening. There was a single faculty representative, but who didn't speak to the issue, but listened. And we mostly heard from the community.
Great, thank you.
May I answer the question? I went around to all 3 secondary schools and met with faculty. We did have a survey, but as I said, as people sort of think about it, and I think it's also the timing of the year. We have many young parents who have already begun figuring out what their child care would be, and apparently the timing of this is stressful in thinking about starting next year. I know that when Lexington was having this discussion this year, they decided that, yes, they're in favor of doing the same thing, but let's put it off a year. It gives a chance to talk about, certainly time to plan. There are issues that we need to negotiate about. I don't think it was really part of our contract negotiations this last round. It was something that we actually, it was not a topic on the agenda. So it's what I found out in those listening tours and hearing people is that it's not that they're not in favor of doing what's the right thing for students. It's just all of the issues for them in terms of child care themselves, the time of the day, and it is true that what is happening in the Boston area, which is different now than it was even a couple years ago, is that traffic is just getting to be really challenging. And if the difference between leaving 15, 20 minutes, a half hour can make a big difference in commute times. And people acknowledge that, yes, that shouldn't be the determining thing, but it is a factor in terms of how this plays into people's lives. And I think that at the very least, we need to give some time to it. It doesn't mean that we are not moving in that direction. In fact, we already were where the Middlesex League was aiming for, which is between 8 and 8:30. And as I said, our next door neighbors, Belmont, are going to 8:05. So we're in that range anyway. But I think that would make much easier on everyone if we gave some time to this. Another consideration, I'll just add one more point, is that the following year, pending a successful override and town meeting vote, we are going to be in the beginning of construction. And I don't really know what would be an ideal schedule in terms of how to think this through in terms of construction. So that's another factor that we should probably give a little bit more thought to, too.
Okay, I want to pause for a moment because my understanding is we've withdrawn the motion that was on
Withdrawn
the
my motion.
table. So I think Mr. Carden should make his motion officially, so we have a motion that is on the table.
Thank you. I move that the start time for the middle schools and high school be moved to 8:30 or thereabouts. It should be 8:26 or 8:36? 8:30? What is
8:30
it
is what
currently?
we've been talking about 8:30.
Okay.
Yeah, we haven't,
All right, sorry.
there's been some
I'll
discussion
repeat
about
my
the time,
motion.
but
I move that the
8:30.
start times for the middle schools and high school be moved to 8:30, beginning in September 2019.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Hayner gets to speak for, or no,
Dr. Bodie.
actually, Mr. Carden gets to because it was his motion.
Thank you. So when I joined the committee 3 years ago, I went to a community relations meeting where this was discussed. And we had a plan at the time about how we were going to accomplish this and what the roadblocks would be. One of the main things was the contract. And we said we were going to be negotiating the contract the following year. So we wanted to make sure that the contract would be clear, that we could make that change. And it is now clear. I don't know if it was before, but it is now very clear that, and we raised this before we approved the contract. We said, does the contract allow us to change the start times? The answer was yes, and the language is in there that says, that recognizes that the school committee controls the start times. So that was an issue that was on the agenda. We started 3 years ago with the planning. We always said we needed to notify people, preferably, a year in advance. As we were discussing this last year, we said we could wait to late in the fall, and then with the various issues that have been coming up, it's been delayed, but still we've been very clear with the community and with our staff that we were moving towards this. And now all these issues are coming up from you, Dr. Bodie, and it's sort of backpedaling. All along, you were very clear in support of this. Dr. Janger, your principal, was very clear in support of this. I appreciate that it's not going to be easy for everyone. The traffic issues that you raised are going to be traffic issues 2 years from now. So in my opinion, it's time to get on with this. And I'm sorry that it's now in February and wasn't done in December when I would have preferred. I did raise this in December, but now this is where we are. It's time to do it. Thank you.
Mr. Hayner.
Dr. Bodie, the members of the Middlesex League, how many will not be doing this next September? Do you know offhand?
It's about half and half.
So what
Not
does,
everybody yet.
what does that do to the schedule? When we play the towns that are not in line with us, do our students then have a later athletic schedule as a result?
Yes, that already happened this year.
So, okay.
It's
I
already
mean,
going.
we're really close to, we're a half hour off. Other ones were hour and something, so it was dramatic.
Well, some are still in the seventh.
My concern, and it's a minority, my concern is we have we have students the Metco students. The probability is that they're going to be getting on their bus at the same time. Because if they, a half hour or so delay will put them in the middle of the Boston traffic, which is the worst. What I'm asking you right now is to come to us as soon as possible, if this motion passes, to let us know all the issues that you are facing going forward to make this, to implement this, so that we can be prepared to help and let parents know what's going on.
Well, I will certainly do that. I will say that Dr. Janger supports the idea of deferring this a year as well. I think that there are ways that we could think about scheduling And he and I have already discussed some very creative ideas that might soften some of this. And I don't feel like this is the proper time to talk about that, but there are some very creative ideas. Mr. Schlickman has had some creative ideas, and I think we need some time to work it out. What happens is that, yes, there were a lot of other things that were going on that sort of prevented us from having this be on the front burner back in the fall, for sure. But I do think that the timing is an issue now, but I'm not sure the timing would have made that much different late fall either. I think that people need more time in a lot of things to plan for it. But if we knew that this was going to be happening, we could have the time to make all the necessary changes that could make this more workable. And I'm not sure we have the time to do that for everybody at this point.
Ms. Morgan?
So I feel as though there's nothing that makes these decisions happen and gets these plans going than some kind of a deadline. And I support moving towards it in September because I think it will push these decisions. It hasn't happened over the last 3 years. If you set a deadline for when it's going to happen, then all of these decisions are going to be made and the things will be sorted out. So I support Mr. Cardin's motion and will be voting in favor of it. Thank you.
Mr. Schlickman?
My question is this a first reading? If this is a first reading and we're dropping the rock in the pond and we've got to come back and revisit it in 2 weeks, I'd say I'm very comfortable supporting this because if something happens within the next 2 weeks that offers us evidence that we should hold back, then that's a good thing. If not, then we go and send the administration off and said, go implement our policy. If this is a final vote that would require us to revert a vote in order to reverse direction, I think it's a whole other thing. So dropping the rock in the pond, saying that this is our vote on a first read, I think is a totally appropriate move so that we have the opportunity to come back in 2 weeks and finalize it. So that's a point of order, I guess, unless...
Point of information.
More order, unless the motion is friendly amended to say it's a first read. I think our policy is for calendars have to be.
Yeah, calendars.
Yeah,
Yes, that's the same thing.
So that's, okay, so my off-the-cuff interpretation is it doesn't matter if it's in the motion or not. I think it has to be a first read because it's part of the calendar.
You don't offer opinions, offhand opinions, you make rulings, Madam Chair. So you are ruling indeed that this is a first read?
I am open to other interpretations if people have them, but I'm not seeing any. So yes, that's I feel this is going to be a first read, and we would need to retake the motion in 2 weeks for it to be a final decision. Mr. Thielman.
So my questions are this, the motion, Len's motion was for the high school and the middle school?
The two middle schools.
The two middle schools, okay. So all students from 6th grade to 12th grade would start their day at 8:30 a.m.? Okay.
That's the motion.
That's the motion. I'm just curious to know what the discussion has been with the middle school principals about this. What's been their reaction to this idea? Because we've been talking about the high school, and
Right.
so what's their take?
They certainly would work to make it happen if that was necessary, but I think that they also have been hearing from their staff a lot of the issues of implementing it so soon. Another thing that has come up, it actually came up at the community relations meeting that we had with parents, is that there's an issue with the Mass Ave bus. And the students that are able to get on near the Cambridge line, but as they come up through, by the time they get to the Capitol or to Bates Road, students can't get on it. So there's been a request from some parents to take a look at this, and maybe we should have a staggered start time, so that all high school students and middle school students are not getting on the bus at the same time. I thought, honestly, that it was actually the first time I had heard this in a while, because if you recall, we had an issue with the buses a while ago, and there was conversations with the MTA to put more buses, more frequent buses, to handle the volume. Well, I think that's happened somewhat, but it's still not addressing the problem, that students can't get on the bus. And so we're having more parents drive, and this is correct? More
Yeah,
parents
yeah,
drive
absolutely.
that would like to drive because of this issue. This was fairly new recently. It hadn't been brought up earlier, and it's something that we need to really consider. And maybe that could work. We can make it work in terms of shared staff, but I think that's another consideration. I think we need more planning, and these things have just come up, and I realize there's an impatience with it. I certainly will very much support this idea, but at the same time, I want it to work well in the district.
Mr. Thielman.
So my preference with these things is that the school district administration comes to us with a plan of staggered start times or whatever the case may be. Because I feel like the school committee is saying you're going to open the school day at 8:30. If administrators go to work and they look at the schedule and look at the number of minutes students have to have, and they look at other people's schedules, they may say, well, actually, it may make more sense for, the Gibbs and the Addison to open at 8:15 and the high school to open at 8:30. And so I think that kind of thinking needs to take place. It's usually best, boards work best when they're responding to a clear strategy from the leadership of the organization. That's been my experience, because you can't just pick a number in a meeting. So I think Paul's solution here, which is we take this first read. The first read is essentially a sense of the committee. And then the second read, we might have a lot of people in the room. And so that could be good. And I think it could be a good dialogue. So I think the second reading could be a chance, because I would like to hear directly myself from both middle school principals and the high school principal about this, because they're the ones that have to implement the strategy that is being developed in a motion where we're not even sure if it should be at 8:30 or 8:26. So I'm going to vote for this because I see this as a first reading, but then I really want everyone here in 2 weeks, and I think there should be thought about a strategy, and I don't think you pick 8:30 without a lot of thought, because it's not just 8:30. There's a lot of thinking that goes into the start of a school day, and there's a lot of thinking that goes in the part of the end of the school day and the number of minutes you have in between, and that's done by people inside the district who are running the place. That's my thinking.
So I agree with Ms. Morgan that nothing sharpens the mind like a deadline. I want to point out that we had asked last year for teachers to join us in discussing the issues that might come up with both this and any calendar changes. We once again have an opportunity coming up very shortly to get a committee together to talk about potential calendar changes, which would not be implemented right away. And so I ask that we not make this mistake again, that we really, that if teachers are interested in these issues, that they should join this committee. There should be full, robust discussions early and often, so that we work out all the questions and differences that we have.
Ms. Morgan.
I think I'm fine with having this be a first read. I don't have great expectations for what planning is going to come back in 2 weeks, because I don't see there's any incentive. If the desire of the high school principal and of the superintendent is to not do this for the next year, I'm not optimistic that we're going to get a robust and implementable plan back in 2 weeks, because I don't think there's any incentive to produce that for us. So, I'm fine with doing it. I think we should have that conversation, but I'm not optimistic.
Mr. Thielman.
So So two comments. One, I think it's pretty easy to, after this motion, to direct the superintendent to come up with a plan for a staggered start of the school day with specific times for the middle school and the high school within the framework of the 8:30 start that the committee desires. So it's possible to do a second vote, and then it's a requirement. So that's the other thing. Secondly, we have a middle school a teacher here. I don't know, do you have any, do you have any thoughts? I don't mean to take over the meeting, Kirsty, but.
Thoughts on what?
Yeah.
Later start time.
I will tell you.
Mr. Hayner, can you give her the mic?
Sorry.
I think you've seen the survey results. They're pretty split between pro, against, and I can work it either way. The timing is an issue. A teacher told me today she's already missed getting her kid into extended day preschool because this vote has happened so late. So she doesn't, if it's voted on, I'm hearing another 2 weeks after this, there's a lot of people in that boat of, preschool signups are gone. They're done. They're closed. And when you're asking teachers to adjust their schedules so late, that's a real hardship to put on people.
Mr. Hayner?
In the prospective plan that might come forward, I'm a little nervous about changing, making staggered times based on current enrollments and stuff. I just figured it out. There's 3 bus stops between the Cambridge line and the Capitol Theater. If we've got a lot of high school and middle school students in that one section of town, they're not going to be there on a consistent basis. So we'd be changing our start and start times. If we're going to base it on the population and how many kids are getting on the buses and stuff, I'd just be nervous about that, that's all. That's a minor thing.
Dr. Seuss?
Just to clarify, because I live in East Arlington, the kids who have the trouble getting onto the bus live after the Capitol, right? So it's like these kids who are
But
going
that
to
implies there's a
Addison.
lot of students getting on prior to the Capitol.
Right, and so
filling
the
up the
bus
bus.
gets filled, right.
So in 3 stops,
So it's like,
there's so many middle school and high school kids
like-
that fill the bus?
yes, there are. And the bus drivers are not necessarily the most kind at that time in the morning because their bus is filled with middle school and high school kids. So
But
if it's
that's not our
at all
purpose to do.
filled, they just don't stop. Yeah, that's definitely what happens. I mean, living in East Arlington, that's what I've seen, yes.
Mr. Garden?
Thanks. So I would welcome in 2 weeks a more detailed plan with adjustments for implementation in this fall, as long as we're clear on that. Again, it's just been such a long process. I had expected a plan from the administration on this a long time ago, and there was one delay after another delay and distraction, and so, as Ms. Morgan said, there's nothing like a deadline to get the plan in place. So certainly, I'm not set on exactly 8:30 at each school. If it's 8:20 at one and 8:40 at the other, or whatever works. But clearly, more in the 8:30 timeframe, shifting later is what we're trying to do.
Mr. Hayner?
If I would like to have any materials, supporting materials for the scheduling and things in a timely manner, not just at our meeting, so we have a chance to digest it ahead of time. Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak to or for the motion? Okay,
Can I just make a comment?
please.
It's actually fairly unrealistic to have the kind of plan you're alluding to. The issues that have come up were not known at the time we were discussing this. Yes, this has probably taken a little bit longer, but I have to say to you, it's taking long in every district because it's a big change, and it affects people. Some of the issues are contractual issues that were unanticipated, and that's going to take time for negotiations. There's no, that negotiations are negotiations as we go along. I think that one of the things that I don't think we fully appreciated either was all of the timing for preschool applications and the number of our faculty that are in that situation. And these discussions have been happening over the last couple of months, and these issues are rising up. Those kinds of things can't be changed. So those are issues that are out there. But in terms of plans that could be implemented, some of them require negotiations as well. And whether you're shifting time on days, which is one option, adding periods to the day, having flex scheduling, these are all different kinds of changes. I think that in general, there is a strong sentiment to accomplish this. And I appreciate the impatience in wanting it sooner than later. But what I would think would be a reasonable way to look at this is to think about putting this in motion. We're going to have a plan for beginning in September 20 and have some time to work this through. I think you're right that deadlines really sharpen the mind on these things, because I think the fact that this was proposed, that we could do this next year, all of a sudden people started realizing what the implications of that were, and that probably is just sort of human nature on this. So, but to do this well, to do it thoughtfully, this cannot be done in 2 weeks, to have a plan that's going to satisfy the committee. It's just not realistic. Now, what we can do in 2 weeks is to I can have the principals come, we can discuss this, and hear their thoughts on it. And, but I think what I was hoping to have from all of you tonight is, your support, and it's clear that you all are supporting the idea. And so that is a good place to be in, that we can move this forward.
Mr. Carden?
Yes, at that meeting 3 years ago, we agreed that our goal was to move the start time to 8:30. We asked you, what do we need to do that? We talked about the various steps we would do to do that. We've gone through all of those steps, and we're still here. So now there's more steps. So I stand by my motion. Thank you.
Anyone? Oh,
Can
yeah, please.
my concern, as a parent, I understand how difficult it is to get kids up in the morning. But as the person sort of responsible for staffing and in the district, along with other administrators, but I think our interest is really in retaining really well-qualified staff and teachers. And my concern, because of the issues that have come up with the commute times, teachers are still going to have to get here as early as they do now. They can't leave their house later because it will take them a lot longer to get here. It will increase their commute at the end of the day as well. And those are legitimate concerns that the teachers have if they don't live really close to Arlington and have a little bit of a commute. And so their effective workday, even though their contractual workday will stay the same number of hours, their effective time commuting to and from will increase. And they have legitimate concerns that they will have less time with their families, with their kids. I think one of the reasons that teachers can't come to the committee meetings is probably because they have to get home and get their kids and pick them up from childcare or after-school care or whatever it is. And so, my concern is that I don't want to lose good teachers because they need to find a job closer to home that has different hours if that's the only reason they would be leaving. That's just a consideration I have from, I understand the parent perspective, I understand the kids need sleep, I understand all of that, but I do want to keep good staff here.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, so I haven't spoken for or against the motion. I will actually vote against it. I understand that you feel that it's the most important thing that we can do for our students, but I've looked at the literature that we were given and there's very little that talks about moving from 8 to 8:30. When you see these big changes, it's people going from start times of 7 to 8:30. And those are tremendous differences. The incremental difference between 8 and 8:30, I think, is significantly less. We're already into kind of the okay zone. I understand that parents would like it. I understand that teens probably would like it. But I'm also concerned about retaining our good staff and that it is imposing. I'm concerned about the motion for 2 reasons. One, it's a hammer, and I don't like using hammers when working with staff. It does not show flexibility. I understand that you're frustrated. I think we should have figured out our frustration much earlier in the year and been working on it. I also agree it would have been better had the administration been pushing forward too, but anyway, I don't feel we should be using hammers. So I feel like there isn't as much benefit as what is being discussed, and it's imposing hardship. I understand this is only a first read. I just ruled that it was only a first read. But I still feel it's not the right way to do, it doesn't express the desire that I would like to see. I think we can, I also think that we do need to talk, if we're going to talk about start times, we should look at the whole picture and get the staggering and stuff fixed at the same time. It doesn't make sense to say everybody's going to start here and then realize, oh no, actually we need to change it. So that's another issue. So with that, if no one else has anything else to say for or against the motion.
Can I
Oh, please, sure.
I also think I echo Dr. Bodie's sentiments as it relates to providing a well-thought-out plan in 2 weeks and meeting with principals. We're in the midst of doing other things. We have MCAS coming up. So we have other initiatives that are going forward that they're concentrating on as well as the teachers. So I don't think that it would be a lack of effort or us trying to do what's best for kids, because that's always at our goal as administration. So I just want to let you know that if we were to be tasked with trying to come up with the plan, we would do everything in our effort in order to make sure that it's thoughtful and well thought out. So I just wanted to let you know that, whatever we try to do what's best for kids. And so, but trying to come up with that type of plan, as Mr. Thelman said, is going to be very difficult within 2 weeks. So, I mean, if you want a plan that's well thought out, I think we need to think about all the components that go into developing a plan, because we're actually in the midst of trying to come up with the specialist schedule for next year at all levels. So it's going to take some time.
Mr. Hayner.
I've got to respond to that. Basically, if I need a deadline, I need a date specific, and I hear everything that's been said with as far retaining staff, the imposition it puts on staff, the facts that it does. What Dr. Ampe said with the closeness, I agree with her on the idea of the time. If this was a 7 o'clock time thing, I don't think we'd have a trouble getting a vote at any time. But I think we're all for it. If we don't have a definitive plan in 2 weeks, and I can understand all the reasons why not, I need to know when the plan would be ready, when we would have it, when we could implement this. If it is not going to happen, to convince me to vote not to do it in September, 2 weeks, you've got to tell me when it's going to happen.
Okay, Dr. Whiting.
As I started this conversation out tonight, my recommendation is that we move in this direction. Whether it's staggered or not, is it something that needs some thought? I hadn't heard about the real bus problem until quite recently, other than we needed more buses, which I thought we had dealt with. But I think that, planning it for September 20 makes sense. And then there are issues that we can figure out that could be very creative. We want to, as Mr. Spiegel was talking about, there are some people that would be on the edge on this one for sure. I realize that, yes, we could have put some more, we could have had this a little bit more front and center earlier, but I want to remind you all it has been before all of us over the last year or so. There's been a lot. And not insignificantly is what's going on with this high school. It's taken a lot of time, a lot of effort, and these things require we've been working on multi-year plans we've spent huge amounts of time on that whole issue this fall with the administrative team. There is a issue of how many things can you deal with simultaneously and give it the thought you need. I don't think it was 3 years ago, because the Middlesex superintendents had their vote about 2 years ago, but it's something that we've been thinking about for sure. And, but I'm asking that you let us all work together, teachers, administrators, parents, and figure what makes the most sense for Arlington and what is going to, improve the conditions for our students to learn.
Okay. With all that, so all in favor of the motion as presented?
Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
All opposed?
Aye.
Aye. And any abstentions? So that was 5-2 to 0. So this will be a first read, and we'll have it on the agenda for our next meeting. And Mr. Thimlin, did you want to make a motion to direct the superintendent about?
Well, I heard about the 2-week problem, so. I mean, if this passes next week, then it's the policy of the district as written, with everybody starting at 8:30. So I think we have to make a motion, depending on how that vote goes. I think we make a motion at that time, because my motion would be to direct the superintendent to come up with a plan for staggered start times by, September, the first meeting in September, if we're going to do it in 2020. So I can't make a motion at this time if this passes.
Okay.
I don't know how you do it.
Mr. Carden?
I mean, I think the point is, we just voted for September 2019, 5-2. The point is, if the administration thinks 8:30 isn't the exact right time, 8:35 at one school, 8:25 at another, all that those kind of adjustments can be discussed over the next 2 weeks and brought to us. It's a very simple question. All of the other planning as to what the length of the school day is, what other adjustments that might need to be made, that can happen more slowly, but we're setting the start time. And so we need to know in 2 weeks if their administration recommends adjustments to that.
Mr. Schlickman?
I'd say, as I said before we started here, I am open to postponing until 2020. If we are presented with evidence at the next meeting, I expect really good evidence, people showing up and talking about this, and a presentation that would be convincing of myself and one other member to go to 2020. I'm open to doing that. So I would urge people, because I insisted on this being a first reading, and I think the chair was wise to make that ruling, that if we have a preponderance of evidence coming through that it would be prudent to postpone until 2020, I'm very, very open to that. But I really want the ball to be rolling to the point where we have as much on the table as we need to say, we're moving back to 8:30, do we do it this year or next year? So that's the decision in my mind. And as I said, I'm open to going and waiting a year if I see clear evidence that that's what we should do. I'm lacking that evidence right now. I'm operating in the dark. I'm saying let's move forward, at least the first step. And I think that everybody else in this committee are really thoughtful folks who are open to evidence, open to community discussion, and will vote accordingly. So please, to anyone who has a concern over this, either pro or con, let's have a good discussion here. Let's have a good discussion in the community. Let's have the evidence in front of us that we need to make a really good decision. Excuse me, and then we'll move forward.
That's March 14th is the next meeting, right?
I think so. So with that, we move on to our next topic, which is the budget discussion. So I don't know that we have any specific things that we need to discuss with the budget. Is there anything that's come up?
Nothing.
Anything?
I mean, I can give the update now instead of during committee reports. So there was a long-range planning meeting on Monday, was it, right?
Yes.
And there was further discussion about basically largely around our additional requests, our requests for, our somewhat vague request for additional money. We had discussed at our last budget subcommittee meeting a high, medium, and low scenario regarding what's in our 5-year plan, and we passed those on. All of the numbers weren't really generated for the long-range planning committee to review the impact of each of those, except in the aggregate. So it wasn't a full discussion, but there was more discussion about requesting more information about sort of why we need money for different things. So we have another budget subcommittee meeting tomorrow to try to address some of those requests. And I think that's the main thing.
Has there been any meetings with the community for feedback on the budget or anything?
No, so tomorrow, well, in the budget, we had the hearing tonight. On the 5-year plan, tomorrow we need to set up a time in March where we can go out to the community, preferably administration and budget subcommittee together, to present it and get feedback.
Okay. But
That will affect, that really won't affect the numbers, but more priority type issues.
But there's been no feedback on the budget so far.
I have not gotten any feedback from anyone, no.
I haven't gotten anything.
Mr. Hayner?
Is there any, in the past, different members of the committee, the budget committee or other members of the committee have done PowerPoint presentations briefly to PTOs and things of that nature, got some feedback. I don't know if there's any plans for you to do that.
Yeah, so I am going to one of the PTOs in March, but on the 5-year plans. I mean, the first year of the 5-year plan is our budget, so that will be part of it. But the idea, a lot of them, only a few of them responded. They didn't have time. They had the high school coming to them. So it seemed better to have this community-wide meeting in March.
Thank you.
So were there any other questions or concerns with the budget to bring up at this point?
So I guess, looking forward, I mean, I think at some point, there will likely be a decision on, what we are going to have in the town long-range plan, and then that will come back to us to confirm that we're okay with that or not okay with that. But, yes.
I can ask a question. Sorry. So the long-range planning committee is going to come back, they're going to ask us for, how's that? I'm confused.
Yeah, so it's always this interactive process where, like last time the first time we made the adjustment for the enrollment growth factor.
Yeah.
It was 25%. That was decided at long-range planning, and we just sort of lived with that. I think it's more appropriate, though, for whatever is decided at long-range planning to actually come back, be presented, and be discussed by us.
So we would take a vote to accept their recommendation, or we would just discuss?
I don't know that needs to be that formal, but certainly if depending on the timing of the long-range planning meetings and things get decided, I do think it should be discussed here, and, hopefully there'll already be consensus on it.
Dr. Seuss?
And just to point out that at some point, the select board will be making a vote on their proposal for an operating override, which
Right.
will be tied into this, which may or may not, likely will, but accord with the 5-year plan, that long-range planning discusses, right? And so ideally, that sort of meshes up together, but they will have their own discussion. And what they're asking from us seems to be, help me explain what you're looking for to my committee. Yeah. we don't understand enough of it yet. I mean, they just haven't been through the discussions. And so they're asking for more explanation from us.
In the past, I point out, it hasn't been, it's been more dictated, the numbers have
right.
been
Yeah,
more
yeah, we're trying to-
dictated. You know, it's not like we can, I mean,
Yep.
it's more of an acknowledge than an accept or a quibble, you know. We can discuss as much as we want, but.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there are three of us on the long-range planning committee, so it's not quite a majority, but, you know, so if three of us, and Dr. Bodie, yeah, if we all go along with whatever if we all agree to whatever they come up with, then it's hard to then turn around and, you know, as a committee, say, no, that's not enough. But it is this interactive process this year, and, you know, just have to see on the timing. We may be able to discuss it at our next meeting.
Okay, so,
So we are in the position, we've made recommendations to you in terms of priorities. As you know, we've spent actually quite a bit of time as administrators this fall looking at really what do we need over the next 5 years. In trying to be very careful about it, strategic, and I think have developed some good strategies in terms of personnel and other things that we need to really maintain and improve the excellent school system that we do have. Now, as you know, from the multi-year, we had, in the first year of that plan, about $3 million worth of asks. And so it was a very challenging process to go through it, to say, okay, we know what monies, at least at this point in time, that we would have to be able to address some of those. And so prioritizing them to the $1.2 million level was took a while to do. So the question I have for you tonight, as we go forward with this, are there things that you agree, do you agree with them? Are there things that you feel that maybe a bit further down the list that you think should be brought up? Because this is what we all have to be on the same page on. And I guess that's what I want. Because in the past, we've had some things, and you've had some asks that you thought were more important, and I just want to make sure we are there. So we would like to send off this budget to the Finance Committee, so they can at least start seeing it. We've done that in the past. It's not a final school committee vote until we go through the next vote on the 14th. But they would like a chance to have it ahead of time because we're going to meet with them on the 20th. That doesn't give them much time otherwise.
Ms. Morgan?
So where's the list with the 1.2? Has that changed? Has it changed? Is it the same one we had 2 weeks ago?
It's the same one we had
Okay.
2 weeks
Because there's
ago.
nothing there's nothing in Novus, so
We have
it's
to go
hard to
back.
have a good conversation about
Yeah.
the 1.2 without, there's,
A refresher.
what?
You want a refresher?
Well, I just wanted to be sure that whatever we had, I don't know what it was dated. I have the,
Things changed.
so it's still the
Yep.
22.1 FTEs that we had
Yep.
however many weeks ago. Okay, great,
Right.
thank you.
Okay, Mr. Hayner?
I guess my confusion is, we decide what we're going to spend the money on.
Right.
The town either accepts or rejects the $1.2 million, the money that we ask for, okay? So I guess, why do we need to have specificity with the different groups?
The school, this is the extra money. That-
Yes, I understand, but
The,
It's our budget.
you want to try?
no, that's it exactly, it's our budget.
Yes.
Well, they're here in the room. We always have
No,
the
I
discussion with
understand.
Finance Committee every year. So certainly they like to look at what we want to spend the money on.
Okay.
And I think it's fine now. We won't formally vote to adopt the superintendent's budget till next week. Because, we could actually vote tonight because we didn't have any input from the hearing, but the schedule was built so that we had the hearing tonight.
Right.
If there was input from the community that required a change, we would then have time to change it.
Right.
So that 2 weeks from now, we could approve it. Seeing that we aren't, unless there's further discussion, seeing that we aren't going to change it, certainly it would be fine to release it to, it's already up on the website, to
on the
release it to the
website, yeah.
Finance Committee. And it will officially become our budget, our current budget for 1920, fiscal 2020, next meeting. And then, should there be, the discussions we're continuing to have is, should there be an override, will we get additional spending and how much?
Thank you.
So tonight, you want to take a vote tonight, or?
It's not on the agenda. It's not on the agenda.
Well, it's just,
Thank you.
it's budget discussion, so somebody can make a motion. Yeah, it's not, we're not prohibited.
I'm glad to know you're all fine with
Yeah.
this. Great.
Yeah.
We're good.
Right, there's enough there to take a vote if people wanted to. It's published as budget discussion.
We're not going to take a vote.
Yeah, okay.
So, any further discussion on the budget? No. Okay. We move on to the monthly financial report. Mr. Mason.
All right, tonight we have the monthly report for the period ending January 31st, 2019. And this report is, as always, prepared by Elizabeth Montez. Appreciate all the hard work that she does to complete this report for me and to present to you. In this report is 2 reports. It includes the general fund report, which is really the town appropriation, is a report of the local funding and the state aid that we get as a district to educate the students in Arlington. And then there's the second report, which is the grants and revolving accounts reports. On the general fund, we are currently projecting a balance of $222,056. That does not mean that there's an actual surplus. It's just a projection. As always, there could be unanticipated expenditures that can come in the future. But what's interesting is we vet this report there. We've adjusted some items, but we've noticed that utilities came in higher now than budgeted after we reviewed some of the encumbrances. And we've increased those encumbrances and they were driven by electricity costs. It's difficult to project those costs, and according to working with Ken Pruitt on Town Hall and the new school that was added, it was difficult to project the expenses that was related to that. But overall, the surplus balance is being pushed by special education out of district tuition. And so it's too early to project this balance, but if there is a balance with the special education out of district tuition, we intend to try to move these funds into a special education stabilization fund. But the mechanism to do that would be we would have to present a budget transfer to this school committee to appropriate an amount in the budget to move to the stabilization fund. And that funding could be used for a rainy day in the future in case special education costs were to be higher than anticipated.
Mr. Schlickman.
Do we have a warrant article ready to go to do that?
You do not need a warrant article.
To go in, we
No.
need to go out?
Correct.
Okay.
Town vote is required to remove the funds.
Selectmen,
To
Board of
use.
Selectmen vote.
Yeah, selectmen vote,
Yeah.
yeah, sorry.
This is the new account that was been set up by
Okay,
Bessie.
It's
we
municipal
changed the
finance.
rules, okay.
Change the rules.
Yeah,
Modernization.
I'm stuck in the old one.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Hayner.
Michael, I have a couple of questions on a couple of line items.
Yeah,
81,115 clerical salaries, it's currently showing a potential deficit of 53,000. Can you, Dr. Bodie, tell me why? Yeah,
those are over all of the clerical salaries across the district. It was just the budget that was set aside for them, the salaries are actually higher. Some of it's also driven to additional responsibilities that some of the clericals may have undertaken to cover absences.
So for substitutes and things of that nature?
Yes, correct.
Pretty
Not,
high. Okay.
but it's not driven just by, the $52,000 is not driven by the
Is
substitutes
this
only.
something that should be, will be dealt with in future budgets and things of that nature?
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
The other one, 81205, student activity support stipend. Is that a stipend, a new stipend, or is it, what happened there? Showing 27,656.
27,656.
1205.
80, student, am I reading this
1205,
right?
I know, he's looking at it.
Student activity support, I think it says STIP, I assume
Yeah.
that's a stipend?
Yeah, those are stipends.
205.
I'm reading
Yeah.
in the final
So,
column,
You know,
27,656.
based on current encumbrances that we're expecting, yeah, that brings us over. It just seems that the budget wasn't aligned with what's being expected, but I can look into more detail for you if you need me to.
Because, I mean, this is, stipends are something that sticks in my craw. We work very hard over the years to straighten those out. If it's a brand-new stipend, that's something different.
Yeah,
But it's a considerable amount of money for stipend, that's all. I'm just curious what it is.
I can
Thank you.
review and bring it up in the next meeting for
Appreciate
you.
it. I mean, if it's just me that's interested, you can just send me an email. If the whole board wants to know.
I think it'd be good for all of us
Okay,
to hear.
thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes,
Is that?
Jen.
Just a little more clarity about projected encumbrances on electricity.
yes.
So I would guess that electricity use diminishes later on as we get more light, or does that not? So that if we're just doing it, right, so the electricity use is higher in the winter, is that?
So we've reviewed the burn rate.
Yeah.
And it's, and what Ken projected was about $1 million. $1
Okay,
million and $100,000 in terms of
Got it.
utility
Okay.
costs. But that's shared between the general fund and the building rentals. And so we're just trying to right-size the budget and
Okay.
trying to address the committee to let you know
That's you.
that these costs.
so is next year's, but did we find out that information in time to adjust the numbers appropriately for next year's budget? Or are we going to have to make an adjustment later on?
An adjustment may be required later on, but depending on how the utilities play out,
Right.
plays out. And
Okay.
any efficiency projects that we're currently doing, how that works out.
Okay, thanks.
Any other? Okay. You covered my
So,
question.
I mean, the grants and revolving are being spent at the time manner that we're expecting to spend. If there's any questions in regards to that, you know, there's nothing really major to report on those. If you have any further questions,
No.
all right,
Okay, great, thank you.
thank you.
Okay. And next is the superintendent's report.
I have a few things. Well, first of all, I know that there were probably some seniors in the high school that weren't pleased with my call this morning. Maybe some other grades as well. I think what's helpful for people to understand, and I wrote some emails back to people today on this, you know, this is a decision that's made around 4:30 in the morning when I'm conferring with, through our Director of Custodians to DPW, our Director of Transportation is in his car doing bus routes up the hills to see if there's any problems. So a lot of people are on the ground checking the schools to make sure. I don't think any of us expected the extra little snow squall that came in later, but what we look very carefully at is whether the roads and the conditions around the schools are going to be safe for people to come to school. It doesn't mean that everybody is going to feel that they think that this is safe conditions to have their child go to school, and I respect that. So that is why I've said before, and it's a good time to say it today, is that, you know, if you feel that it is not safe and you cannot drive or your child cannot walk, you just need to let the school know. And it is an excused absence. it's an absence, it goes in our record, but it is excused, not an unexcused absence. So, though I have to say, it went very smoothly today. There were no real issues, actually. It went very well. I'm sure that there were teachers that came from some distances that might have been a little bit late. I know that did happen, but that is going to happen. Even when they leave earlier, you never know what you're going to anticipate along the route. But hopefully we'll see the end of it soon. I do know another storm is in the offing, but will hopefully bypass us. The good news is it's coming into March tomorrow. That's very good news. We may actually go through the whole winter without a snow day, which means we would have the last day of school being June 18th. And that would be wonderful to not go into the last week of June like we have done in past years. So I'm hoping for that. And I probably shouldn't hope for it because I think, didn't you tell me the last
Oh,
time?
yeah,
I said
you made a comment
that
yeah.
I jinxed the whole thing, right?
Jinx the whole thing.
There has, speaking of calendar and end of the year, there has been some confusion about when kindergarten students leave for the year. As you recall, last year, when we were talking about the calendar for this year, we're always sort of trying to figure out a new way to handle screenings for incoming students, which is required under DESE regulations. And this year, we, from the recommendation of the kindergarten steering committee and the principals, to dedicate the last 2 full days of the school year to kindergarten screening for next year so that we can do class lists and look to see which students might need some extra support next year. But on the calendar, there was an error saying that that students would be, kindergarten students would be dismissed at 11:30 on the 13th of June. That's not, they go the full day on the 13th. So principals are aware of this. Communication is going to go out to all kindergarten parents. It actually came up with one of our after-school programs looking at that, and because our after-school programs are trying to plan for perhaps programs for their current students during those 2 days. Actually, it's 2.5 days. It's the last 2 full days, and then the half day, which is the last day of school. So we're going to get that corrected, but I do want people to know, parents that may be listening tonight, though I doubt many kindergarten parents are listening at this hour, or they're putting their kids to bed, that the 13th of June is a full school day for kindergarten students, and that will, clarification will be sent out. Speaking of some things that we may have down the road in terms of impacts on our facilities budgets, we had a little bit of, we're a little bit of wind damage the other day. I don't think it's anything serious. We're getting assessments on that, but we'll be back in touch. So there are things that the good news about where we are right now is that it would be wonderful to be able to have some additional money from our out-of-district tuitions go into this account, but we still have a few more months of school to see where we are. I think, speaking of kindergarten, I know you all want to know where we are with kindergarten numbers.
Yes.
If I combine the list of people who haven't completed their application and those that have, we're up around 426 right now, but we still have 71 of those applications that are not complete. Our own projections for next year was 536, and Karen Tassoni in our office looked at where we were this time last year. Even though we started earlier this year, we were right around the same number this time last year. Right. So we have a ways to go yet, but we did have a parent call today wondering if they missed the deadline for registering for kindergarten. You did not miss any deadlines. Please register as soon as you're able. And so we'll see. We'll see where we are. I also want to give you an update on athletics. Our teams are doing quite well in the postseason. I think one accomplishment which is really worth noting is our boys hockey team made the Super 8 again this year. And they are having the first game of the playoffs this coming Sunday at 4:15 at Songus Arena. So they did not make it last year, but they made it the year before, and the year before, if you recall, they won that year. So we're wishing them great success. The girls' hockey team made it into the postseason as well. Unfortunately, they did not prevail last night. The cheerleading group has finished second in the league, which means they now go on to regionals. Boys basketball has done well, and they have the second game in the playoffs this coming Friday at Belmont at 7 o'clock. So it's the second round. I think it's still one more round before they win the North. And then girls basketball made it to the playoffs, but unfortunately did not go further. So they're doing really well, and I want to congratulate them all because it's a lot of hard work. And sometimes they're late evenings, talking about not getting enough sleep when they have weekday games. But it's a credit to their discipline and perseverance that they're doing as well as they are. So congratulations to them. And hopefully, when I come back in 2 weeks, I can tell you that we have a league champion or something. All right. That's it. Did you
Actually-
want to talk about the high school project? Any updates on that?
Yes.
All right.
Oh, did I want to talk?
Do
I
you
don't.
want to talk about it, or I don't know if it's,
Do you want to talk about it now?
put it
Well,
right in this report.
Okay, so since we last met, well, I'll just tell you where we're at. We went through a very extensive value engineering process. We approved a project submission to the Massachusetts School Building Authority for a $291.4 million school with approximately the maximum amount of money we can receive from the state. State grant is $86.4 million, and then about $205 million will come from the taxpayers of Arlington. We there'll be a meeting with a subcommittee of the MSBA in some point in March, either March 13th or March 20th, and then the MSBA board votes on April 10th. Then we have 120 days after that vote to secure town approval. There's 2 steps in town to get town approval. There's a special town meeting on April 29th, where Article 2 will be the high school, and that requires a 2/3 vote at town meeting to allocate to approved debt. And then on June 11th is the vote, and that requires a majority vote of the voters. And if we pass those 2 hurdles, then we start the design development stage in the summer of 2019 and begin construction and break ground sometime in the later part of the school year in 2020. So the building committee has been meeting with different groups in town and we have a bunch of meetings lined up. We have met with the Open Space Committee, the Tree Committee. Today was the Capital Planning Committee. Next week is the Finance Committee. We have meetings scheduled with our Recreation Commission. We have trying to go find a date for the Sustainable Arlington Committee, the Bicycle Advisory Committee, and I, the chair, going back and forth on a date, Transportation Advisory. So we have a bunch of meetings set up with all the different committees in town to try to get the word out and answer questions and hopefully get their endorsement for the project. And so it's a busy time for the committee. I'm not sure what else should I report on.
How did it go with capital planning?
It went very well with capital planning. We had high praise from the chair of the capital planning committee for where we're at with the project. He would like it to be less, but he was very complimentary of our work and the presentation. And I think generally supportive. I left before. I don't know if they took a vote or what to support us. I'll find out.
Ms. Morgan?
There's some good stuff up on the website. There's
Yes.
some good new articles.
There's a lot of stuff on the website. We're going to Permanent Town Building Committee.
Yes.
The 12th.
Yeah, right.
The 12th. We have a double. We've got to manage different people. We
I
got.
started my questions for you.
Oh, good. I'm not coming to that. I have a work commitment, so it's going to be. So we've got some people going to Permanent Town Building Committee, and some people going to Park and Recreation.
We were told John Cole was our former chair, so.
John is coming to that one, and then the principal, the superintendent, the athletic director are going to talk to all the sports user groups on the 12th at 7 o'clock in the senior center. Yeah, no, I forgot about that one, yeah.
Great.
A lot of good stuff.
Thank you for all your work.
Thank you for your support.
Seriously.
Thanks, Bill.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Then we keep moving on, and it's a consent agenda. All items listed with an asterisk are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the committee so requests, in which event the item will be considered in its normal sequence. Approval for warrant number 19154 dated 2/14/2019. Total warrant amount $961,618.77. Approval of minutes, regular school committee minutes of 2/14/2019, and there is no trip. So who raised?
So moved?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so that passes unanimously. And now we go on to the subcommittee reports. We've already heard from budget. Community relations.
We have a school committee chat coming up this Saturday, 11 to 12 at Cafe Nero. Also, because it's this community, we also need to have a meeting in a few weeks. We have an appointment to make, or to suggest, for the Human Rights Committee, but we haven't scheduled that yet. And since this is related, I would ask the superintendent to send out next week the request to the community to be on the calendar committee. You know, we've talked about doing this. I think now is the right time to sort of get the applications so that we can start talking about this early. Just to remind everyone, in 2020/2021, if we have snow days, the last day of school is on June 29th. And that's why we're considering making calendar changes. Now, the upshot, what might happen is that we make no changes. No decision has been made about whether we're going to make changes, but we want to have a full and robust discussion. We want to have that with the community, we want to have that with teachers, and we want to do it starting pretty soon.
Curriculum.
We meet on Thursday, March 7th at 5 o'clock. Do I have it right?
5:30, maybe 5 o'clock, I don't know.
5 o'clock, yeah, 5 o'clock.
Okay. Facilities,
Nothing at this time.
policy?
Hey, we're online. The new manual is online, up and running, and can be accessed through the school committee website. So life is good. We need to have a meeting to look it over and to handle a couple of the other things that are on the agenda. And we certainly need to do that in the month of March before we terminate our school committee season. So for the other two members of the subcommittee, we'll need to get together and make a date.
Legal services,
Nothing
nope.
at this time.
High school, we've heard from Gibbs.
Nothing.
And any liaison reports or announcements? No? Okay. Oh, actually, I have an announcement. So I'm reading from policy BDA, School Committee Organizational Meeting, approximately 1 month prior to the school committee organizational meeting. School committee members interested in officer positions will notify the administrative secretary and/or the chairperson. So that would be Ms. Fitzgerald or me. So sometime in the before the 14th, if you can let us know what your thinking is for the next year, so we can pass that on. And is there anything people want to see for future agenda items?
So we'd wanted to see the technology plan. I don't know when we'll be able to see that, but
Okay. Just write it down so I don't forget.
Yes, Greg?
Okay, please.
We have had, I think we've had some fairly full agendas. last year we had a lot of our curriculum leaders come in and sort of give an update on where things are. And I think that it's very helpful for all of you as well as the community that has a chance to listen. So are there particular curriculum areas, or would you like me just to go ahead and schedule people to come in over the next couple months?
I made this request before. I'd love to see social studies come in and talk about the new
Civics,
sixth grade,
okay.
yeah, the new curriculum for, what's it called, civics, yeah.
Yep.
Mr. Hayner?
I just want to clarify, and I apologize for the confusion. Last meeting, I asked for the field trip to Vietnam to be taken out. I was looking for clarification. I was not looking to have them come. I just wanted to have an opportunity to speak to the individual to find out about the program themselves. I have no problem with them coming to the meeting. There was some confusion tonight. They were going to
Okay.
come, and then they weren't able to come tonight.
They couldn't come.
It was not my intent to have them come. Now, I think it'd be great if they could, but I just wanted to talk to the individual and understand what the program was going to be for the students going there. That's all, as an individual.
Oh, should we arrange,
I'll talk to you.
we'll figure out how that can happen,
Set it up.
okay?
Thank you.
So I won't,
No.
that doesn't need to be
No.
an agenda item. Okay, so that's sort of an anti-first.
Can I have a question? Do you want the social studies director, Denny Conklin, to come to the next meeting? Or?
No.
No, I
How
mean,
does-
just before the end of the year. would be
Oh,
great.
before, okay. All right.
Just a clarification, I know in the minutes, it said that you wanted them to come. Do you want to amend the minutes?
I don't think,
We don't need to do that?
I'll,
Pulled it out, we didn't vote it.
we didn't
Okay.
vote it. We didn't vote it.
Okay, all right, never mind.
When, it was part of the consent agenda, and I
Yeah.
just wanted some clarification. That's why I pulled it out of the consent agenda. It was not my intent
Okay.
to
okay,
make this bigger than it is.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's
Okay, Mr. Carden?
Oh, I was looking for it, but there's something in our policy, and I can't find it where it is in the new policy. But significant changes in curriculum are supposed to be presented to us. So certainly social studies should be coming to us for approval anyways, because that's a significant change. I don't know what other significant changes to that degree are being planned, but that's other stuff that we would want to see for approval.
May I? Well, one of the issues, the change in social studies is driven by state regulations.
Yes. Yeah.
And actually, as part of your policies, you actually have that caveat that, that state regulations sort of supersede policy. I think it would be great for everybody to hear it, and having it here at a meeting is important. But we don't really have a lot of leeway in terms of what we're going to be doing about this.
Yeah, the policy that Mr. Carden is referring to is IGD. And I think the statement is, committee wishes to be informed of all new courses and substantive revisions in curriculum. It will receive reports on changes under consideration. Its acceptance of these reports, including a listing of the high school programs and studies, will constitute its adoption for official purposes. So the committee's not looking to get in the way, but there is both budgetary implications and the fact that we need to be aware of what's going on in the building. So when we encounter parents or students who are talking about the curriculum, that we're well versed in it. So
Totally,
that's all.
totally agree.
That's all.
I think, it'd be great to have them come in, and it does have budget implications because we have to, a lot of materials are in the FY20 budget for this.
Yeah, I don't think the committee's looking to get in the way of moving forward in curriculum. I think that we just need to know what's going on.
Yeah, totally agree.
I'm curious, as the state passed this as a requirement, did they give us extra money to do this?
No, Dr. Alfanapi, they did not. What is it?
I'm shocked.
No. But the governor is hoping to give us more money, and we'll see how that goes.
Okay. Keeping your fingers crossed.
I don't know where this falls in the agenda, so did this policy KFD, you were going to verify, Len, if that was in there?
Yeah, no, we have to, I'll send that for the next policy meeting.
It's not in there.
The changes that we had suggested are not in, no.
So, any other future agenda or anyone's agenda items? Okay. Okay. Moving on. At this point, we don't need to come out for, no, okay. So at this point, we will enter executive, I'm sorry.
You don't.
No, we won't. No, we won't. We will enter executive session. We will exit only for the purposes of adjournment. We will enter to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with union and/or non-union personnel or contract negotiations with union and/or non-union, in which if held an open meeting may have a detrimental effect. To conduct strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation, in which if held in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect. Collective bargaining may also be conducted, and to discuss the contract for for Superintendent Dr. Bodie. So can I have a, okay, can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, and this is a roll call. Mr. Hayner?
Yes.
Morgan?
Yes.
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 Yes. So we now go into executive session.
6 yeses, 1 no.
Gotta keep